Hello, welcome back to Getting Open with me, Andrea Miller. In today's episode, we go deep into childhood trauma. Now stop, come back. I know a lot of you are like, no, I don't want to go there. That is not fun. That is scary. I promise you, not only do we go deep into childhood trauma, we go deep into healing and recovering from childhood trauma. This is an uplifting show with really so much inspiration, so many practical takeaways. So whether you experienced trauma with a lowercase t or a capital T, this show has practical takeaways, a lot of inspiration. And honestly, it is a beautiful opportunity. If you feel like a victim and bad things happen to you, this is a show that will help you become emotionally free. And honestly, I take this so seriously, given my own personal experience growing up and given how prevalent these kinds of experiences are. No matter the continuum, just about every single one of us could stand to be a little more emotionally free and learn to love ourselves just a little or maybe a lot more. So let me introduce my guest and let's get into it. Karena Kilcoyne is a former criminal defense attorney turned author, speaker, and advocate for emotional healing. Her personal journey from enduring childhood trauma to achieving incredible professional success has profoundly shaped her work. Karena is the author of the beautiful book, Rise Above the Story, Free Yourself from Past Trauma and Create the Life You Want, where she outlines a 3-step process to help individuals overcome limiting beliefs and embrace their true selves. Welcome, Karena. And as you have done so, you've done this so beautifully. I just want to say congratulations on your beautiful moving book. I know I've been telling you, like, I can't wait to talk to you. I can't wait to talk to you. There's so much in there that resonates with me. And honestly, thank you for being such a brave poster child for what transformative healing can look and, more importantly, feel like. So thanks for being on Getting Open. I'd love to set the stage for what motivated you to write this book, because obviously you have a very compelling story, and we'll keep coming back to highlights. But do you mind just taking a few minutes to take us back to when things really started to fall apart for little Karena?
Yes. Well, first, let me thank you for having me on your wonderful podcast. I'm just thrilled. So thank you so much. What a fun opportunity to share my story with you and all of your audience. So when did things begin to fall apart for little Karena? I don't know. It would be fair to say, I guess, from the beginning. I was born to 2 parents who were very emotionally unavailable. I grew up in a violent home. My parents were very violent with each other, domestic violence happening, beating, hitting, strangling, verbal abuse, emotional abuse. So I witnessed a lot of that and experienced a lot of that from very early on. But I would say when it really started to become profoundly unbearable was about the age of 12, when my father was sentenced to the federal penitentiary. And when he left me with my emotionally unstable mother, who hadn't been diagnosed with anything, but knowing what I know now, I would say, severe depression, anxiety, probably bipolar. And he left me with her, and I was basically taking care of her emotionally and physically. I mean, there were huge periods of time when she couldn't get out of bed to function, to do anything, to feed us, to pay bills, to do much of nothing else. And then when my father left, I had 2 younger siblings at the time, a brother and a sister. And then a couple of years later, my mother had my last sibling, a brother. So during all of that time, that very young time, the tween era, right? I was really an adult. I didn't have a childhood. I didn't do any of these fun things, and was taking care of my family. And that was really, at 12 years old, the beginning of pretty much the extensive trauma that I experienced.
Like, I wanted just to add to that for our listeners, having so carefully read your book. You talk about these really traumatizing stories where you literally went to your neighbors to ask for money so you could be fed. I mean, domestic abuse of your parents is one thing, but you're not getting fed, having to literally go and ask for money, hustle to feed yourself, and your mom and your siblings, and your mom was really abusive to you too. It wasn't just that they were beating the shit out of each other. From what you describe, she was physically abusive to you. And then honestly, it just sounds like really fucking wacky. Like when things were going south, it's like she had you driving around in her convertible when you should have been in school. Like weird stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's where I'm saying, like, as a child, when you're not able to understand what is going on and you can't process that, and not only that you can't process that, but that person who's your caregiver is not nurturing you and offering you what you need to have critical emotional development, it becomes very dire. But what I did was I just basically shifted into survival mode. And to your point, I mean, there were so many, many times where we didn't have food or money for food. And I had scrapes, through drawers and under cushions and in pockets of old coats to find change. And I would go to the store and I would count out that change on the counter to the cashier. And at 12 years old, and when that money went away, then yes, I started going and asking neighbors, strangers. And I share that story in the book about George and Betty and me going and asking them for money to explain my inner landscape, how that experience shaped and formed me. And in these moments of standing in their kitchen and them feeding me chocolate chip cookies and me wanting to do nothing other than jump into the photographs that they had on their wall, these family photographs that I never had hanging on my walls. I also was in my mind thinking about how I was going to get the right amount of money to come back to my mother and say, I have us covered, right? I got this amount of money, and not have her mad and beat the shit out of me. So what that gave me was this immense sense of like, I'm this maven hell-bent on escape, but also this terrified little girl that thought, am I going to survive this? But also terrified that I was going to end up like her, right? Like my parents. That was just terrifying to me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I want to add just a little more color. What you describe in the hustle that your dad had conceived as I think a car dealer, and you had the FBI out in front of your house. I mean, it's bad enough for your dad to go to prison. By the way, how long was he in prison?
Couple years.
Okay.
Couple years. Yeah.
Yeah. But that, he had left you guys some cash and your mom spent it ridiculously, leaving you in poverty. But I add the part about the FBI and just these really unbelievable experiences that no 12-year-old, no young person should ever have to go through. And I want to really set that stage because I do feel like it's so consequential in terms of what you've done to heal yourself. And then I do want to set the stage for talking about the care that you gave your mom as she went through cancer treatment. So thanks for that background. Let's do this. Just because you've got this beautiful book, I'd love to kind of ask you questions and have you talk about the 3 steps of your book as we go. So we're talking about your story, but also that because you've done so much work and so much healing, I'd really love for this to be so instructive for everybody listening. And, there's a lot of talk about trauma with the capital T, trauma with the little t. We all know very few of us escape childhood without some degree of hurt and some form of trauma. So even if people listening are like, well, mine wasn't that bad, my dad didn't go to prison, that's okay. We all can I took a ton away from Karena's beautiful book. So walk us through these the 3 steps, if you will, please.
So before I even do that, I would love to say this too, because you've done such a beautiful job framing this for me and answering this question. And, the big reason why I have these 3 steps is because really what I wanted to do in this journey is I wanted to create a guidebook for people. So you said, and it's so true that some people are like, well, my trauma wasn't like that. but I did have it, and it's like trauma affects everybody so differently. And what I find is, and what I've found is in my healing journey is that so many of us are ashamed of it. So many of us compartmentalize it. So many of us stuff it away and we think, oh, well, it wasn't that bad, so I should be okay. And we have this stiff upper lip and we think, oh, it's fine. But yet then we go through life closed off or not really experiencing deep love or vulnerability. So what I did was when I got to a certain point in my healing journey, I realized that I wanted to create a guidebook for people, a roadmap. Like, I didn't know where to go and what to do. So I was a lawyer and I was used to reading and researching and writing. And so I really read a lot of wonderful, tough, heady books, Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk. And they're all, there's 72 endnotes in this book, right? So this is a guidebook for people. It's truly like a roadmap. And what I did was when I wanted to create it, I thought, what were the major points in my journey where I shifted and turned and something and my eyes opened more and my heart opened more? And what were those and what were they comprised of? So I came up with these 3 steps. And the first one is acknowledging your story. And that's just creating this awareness around it. I say just creating this awareness is actually one of the hardest parts of the whole deal, right? Because if you don't have the awareness that you're living in a story, that you have a story about yourself that's untrue, then you're not going to go on this healing journey, right? You have to understand that you have a story.
People who let's rewind to the untrue part, because you were abused. That's true. Your dad went to prison. That's true. You had to go hustle for crappy food. It's not like you were going out and getting even good food. You talk about this really crappy food that you ate. So what part of that is untrue? So help me understand that a little bit better.
Right. So what I go into in the book is I go into this thing that what happened to you, the facts of what happened to you is the true part. Your story is your brain's emotional interpretation of who you are as a result of what you experienced. So I believed my untrue story was that I was unlovable because I had 2 parents who didn't love me. And because my father went away and abandoned me, and because my mother laid in bed and abandoned me emotionally and abused me, I was unloved. And because the 2 people who were supposed to love me didn't love me, I was therefore unlovable. So that is the untrue story. And so that's the awareness that we're creating. And I go through in that section of the book how to do that, how to dissect it, your story. And I talk a lot about my experience as a lawyer and how you do that. And like imagining you're on a witness stand and what is true and what is your opinion, right? That's a lot about how to dissect what really happened to you. And there's value to that. We're not saying that didn't happen to you. It happened to you. But whether you choose to be a victim about it or not is up to you. And then what the untrue part is. And that's creating the awareness. And then the second part is untangling yourself from your story or releasing yourself from it. And this is where it gets really interesting because my whole theory on this is from my own real life experience. And the people I've talked to about this is you can't get to where you want to go healing wise unless you know where you've been. It's like I'm in Tampa and I want to get to Detroit. Right? I can't get to Detroit unless I know that I'm currently in Tampa and I've just set a road to get there. So in this section of the book and in my 3-part series and steps is that it's about right here. How did you get this story? Was it repetitive trauma? Was it, and I list a whole, all like 6 different ways you could have and what your stories do to you and how do you release yourself from it? How do you get from underneath that story? And then the third part is finally rising above the story. And this is truly indeed where some of the hardest work is, right? Because this is where we try to find a silver lining in what happened to us. We try to figure out how to finally deeply love ourselves. Because I'm going to tell you, you cannot find deep, true healing if you are carrying around a heart full of shame and grief and resentment. It's just not going to happen.
And rage. Mm-hmm.
And rage and anger and all the things. So how do you get rid of those? How do you release them? And how do you find that deep, authentic love for yourself? And that is really the key to finally rising above the story, is finding that authentic love for yourself. And so many of us who have had trauma, it takes a long time and a lot of work to find that love for ourselves, unfortunately.
Well, yeah. And I say, yeah, unfortunately, except for the good news is that it's possible that you don't have to be a victim, right? And again, you did it so beautifully. So let me ask you this: do you blame your parents?
Oh my gosh, for so long I blamed my parents. Right, in decades, I blamed them. And where I come out with it now, after I would say, interestingly enough, for me, forgiveness wasn't like a one and done. I had big shifts of, I realized that I need to do this. I need to, forgive my mother. And, and that would come at different moments in my life. And so interesting. I had another big shift of a moment a few weeks ago at a Dr. Dispenza event in a walking meditation. I had a mystical moment about my mother, and I had an even more profound level of forgiveness for her. And so I would say that it took me a long time to get there, to get to these moments of, I really see them for who they were, and I understand that they also had their shortcomings and that they also had their own emotional trauma that they carried around. And I don't know, interestingly enough, I found that forgiveness for my father came easier to me than for my mother. In my mind and my heart, I felt like she was supposed to be the one that took care of me. So it took me a long time to get to a point where I felt like I had released her. And when I realized that it wasn't really ever about her, and probably more importantly and more powerfully, I realized that I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. Right. I have a whole section on that in the book about that. Is like, this stuff happens to you. This trauma happens to you. It's something you experience. And in that moment, putting on my legal hat, in that moment, when something violent happens to you, yes, there's a perpetrator, and yes, you are a victim. But beyond that,
or the invisibility that you talk about. I mean, I want to say there is a continuum, right? I mean, from you can be a victim based on violence being done to you, or neglect, right? I mean, there really is a continuum. So I want to make sure everybody listening is like, oh, well, I wasn't, I didn't experience that kind of abuse, but the neglect and emotional hurt and so forth, it all is being done to you, particularly as a child. But go ahead, please.
Oh yes, but then what you choose to do with it afterward, whether you choose to sit in that energy of being a victim and you want to talk about it, and you want to, bash your parents, and, if they loved me, I wouldn't be like this. If they loved me more, I wouldn't have gotten divorced 3 times. I don't know, whatever it is, right? It's like that is what I talk about in the book. That's so powerful of a shift in your personality and your road in this life, your journey in this life, is what energy are you carrying about it? Do you want to say, yes, I lived through that, and because of it, I am now more resilient. I'm stronger. I've found grace. You can find whatever the benefits are of it for you, but it's that you're choosing not to be someone's victim or a victim. You're owning your own power. You're owning your own energy in a situation in your life and in your healing. And that takes immense courage to let go of that, right? Well, it takes immense courage to let go of that.
Totally. And I get that. And I feel it. I think, even I was texting you how emotional I was reading your book, because while many parts of our stories differ, there are many parts that are similar. I've talked really openly about being raised in a alcoholic family and workaholism and so forth. And so while I totally agree with you that it takes this immense courage and it's totally possible and you got to own it, what is the number one way or 2 ways? Because I think a lot of people would say, yes, Karena, we agree, but we haven't crossed the river yet. We're still feeling blame and pissed off. And it's like, you don't know what you don't know. So for somebody sitting here listening, whatever unprocessed trauma that they're feeling, what do you say to them in terms of what you did, right? Because you did a lot of work, and yes, you brought courage to the table. But I'd love to hear you really describe the initiatives that you took that you feel like were the most influential in terms of getting to a place where you love yourself now as somebody who didn't love herself, who, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but dark days for you for a long time.
Yes, for a long time. Well, and I would say too, then, I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate to this, to your point about the workaholism, is that some people kind of can't get out of the muck, and they kind of sit in the muck. And then there are other people who push down the muck, and they just keep moving on. They're like, come hell or high water, I'm going to be anything different than this. And then they work hard and they make all this money. And that's what I did. And then you think, oh, if I have all this stuff, then everything's going to be better. And I'm suddenly going to like myself, and everybody's going to like me, and I'm going to like myself, and it's going to be fabulous. Well, that's not what happened to me. I felt like I was an imposter in my own life when I was practicing as a criminal defense attorney. I was great at it. I didn't really enjoy it, but I was good at it, and I was successful at it. It was everything I thought I wanted to be. And I really hated myself. I hated myself, and I didn't know how to get out of it. So in answer to your question.
Well, let me just add, just again, because I just think this is so relatable to so many people. You abused yourself. I mean, as you describe it, drinking too much, just living a life of despair, and you talk about too much sex, and, we can talk into more about some of those details, but I think a lot of people will relate to what you did to cope. And a lot of us have done extreme fucking things to cope. Right. And I mean, honestly, the burning question is, do you forgive yourself for that kind of abusive behavior? I mean, you did abuse yourself.
Oh, without a doubt. But it's interesting. That's what that's what your subconscious mind knows. And my subconscious mind was addicted to the pain of something, the emotional unavailability of people around me, of men, of friends, of whatever. So, that was a lot of, who I dated, who I married. It was this constant, like in some way, subconsciously repeating a pattern, repeating a cycle. And as a result, if I wasn't getting it, I was creating it. I was creating the chaos. I was creating more trauma. I was creating more drama. I was creating whatever I could. And that included a lot of things, like you said, drinking too much, staying out too long, being with the wrong people, investing myself in the wrong ways. And the number one thing that I felt like I really had to do was put the brakes on. I put the brakes on. I've had different really big moments, like I was talking about earlier, of healing and points in my life when I said, okay, that's enough of that. And I said, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to date. And really what that was, the drinking and the having sex with unavailable men, you know what that was? That was like, I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to be alone. I couldn't be with myself. I didn't like myself. I was ashamed of everything I'd been through. So I didn't even know how to be by myself. As like a 30-something-year-old professional woman, I didn't like being alone. And so I really figured out, like, okay, I need to stop this and figure out what is so wrong with this, and I would have these panic attacks, and all this stuff would come up, all these old memories. So my original road into healing was, therapy, traditional therapy. And it was like interesting. And I've had people come up to me, read this book, and they say to me, one thing I loved about your book so much was that after I read it and I did the exercises at the end, I knew what I wanted to say to my therapist. And that means so much to me, because I would go to therapy and I would talk about, like, oh, I hate my job. My boyfriend broke up with me. What a jerk. He's cheating on me, whatever. And I would never want to talk about my childhood stuff. It was like I would never get vulnerable. I didn't even know how to do that. I compressed and compacted so many years of hurt, and I didn't trust people. And so that was a big deal, was kind of like, like when you have a hard-boiled egg and you kind of tap the shell and you start to pick it apart. That was kind of like what the first time felt like, that first inroad into therapy and, and learning to do yoga and meditate. And what was funny about that, though, was that then I went from being addicted to these things to then being addicted to hot yoga every night at 5:30. But at least it was something better to do with myself.
Yeah.
But still, my point is that you have to do, there's things you have to understand and know about yourself, and be willing to be vulnerable and real with yourself and spend that time doing the work. And a lot of times we look for distraction. We don't want to be focused on the issue. We want to be distracted from it.
Yeah, that's exactly what addiction is. It's like, I don't want to feel the feeling, so I'm going to go drink, have sex, go shop, go work too much. I mean, it's like that meeting that pain and that shame and that emptiness. And even when you were talking about you didn't want to be alone, and it's like, but you were always alone. right? I mean, and so it's almost what, in listening to you, it makes me just think, yeah, you were finding the bad guys that were unavailable because that's what was familiar to you. And that, so it's almost like back to this weird thing we do as humans. We repeat the patterns of pain, of chaos, of anxiety, because it's what's familiar, right?
Yes. Until
And
you learn something new.
Until you learn and practice the shit out of it. Right? Because it's like, that's been my journey is, oh my God, I know better. Why am I having this attachment issue? Why am I having, like, I know better, but that becomes the nervous system that needs that, that deep healing. And you talk a lot about different somatic exercises, which I want to come back to about, using different breath work and so forth. But I want to rewind a little bit to your parents. So you blamed them for a long time, you said. Do you still blame them?
No.
How long did it take you to get to a point where you're like, okay, it's cool?
I would say the first time was probably in my mid-ish to late 30s. I'm 52 now. And my mother died when I was 24. So we never had these talks before she died. Like I never got to that point before she died. So I carried a lot of that after she died. So I would say my mid to late 30s, I started to really have some inroads with that. And then, like I was saying earlier, I've had like peeling an onion. I've had like these different levels of compassion or understanding for them. And, this is all to be said that, I'm also a believer though in, it doesn't mean you have to mend the fence so much that you have to have a relationship with these people, right? I'm not at all, saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but finding the forgiveness and not sitting around and blaming them for your actions or inactions, I think is really what one of the first big cruxes of healing is to own who you are in this moment and how you are reacting to the world and responding to the world around you based on what you've experienced. So I do not now blame them. I think that they had their own incredible, and I share them in the book about my mother. I mean, my mother had also experienced abuse, and her mother abandoned her when she was a baby, and she was raised by her Ukrainian speaking grandmother, and who sewed all of her clothes, and they didn't have hot water, and I mean all the things, and my mother went through a lot, and she didn't know how to love. She didn't know how to mother. She was never mothered herself.
Well, yeah, your mom and my mom have something in common. It's like tough times. My mom was also, sounds like your mom, parentified. And by that, I mean young girls that ended up having to grow up too early, prematurely. My mom met my dad at 18, got pregnant. And that has had a serious consequence on me and my siblings. When you particularly make those decisions when you haven't grown up yourself. It's really hard to raise somebody else when you haven't, particularly as a mom and as a woman. And it sounds like what happened to you.
Yes, exactly. And then the resentment that my mother felt for being in the position she was in and staying with a man who beat her and mentally and physically and emotionally abused her and verbally abused her. And the resentment she felt for, what she would share with me, like, oh, I dropped out of school and I didn't finish this, and I didn't finish that. And while that was her choice, because she hadn't emotionally become aware and lacked emotional intelligence and some grace about what's happening, she would share that with me and make me feel as a young girl that it was all my fault.
She had a victim story. Yeah, she had a victim story rather than her being able to actually own it and be the wise adult that you needed, that we all need as children. Okay, so you've forgiven both of them. Is your dad still alive?
He is.
Are you in touch with him?
No.
Okay.
I am
When's
not.
the last time you were in touch with him?
after my mother died, and we had an interesting conversation, I basically just called to say that I understood. At that point, I might not have found deep forgiveness, but I understood who he was and what he had done. And there's a story that I'd love to share quickly about my father and the compassion that I actually had for him when he got out of prison, and he came to see us by surprise. He didn't say he was coming, and he asked my mother for money so he could start over, because he had left us all the money he had made, and all he went, and I remember him saying, like, all I have is this shirt on my back. And I remember loving the shirt he was wearing. It was just such a, you have those memories, like the smell or the feel of something. And it was this soft blue flannel shirt, and it matched his eyes. And I just remember him wearing that and standing in the driveway, and he wanted money. And my mother said, I don't have anything for you. And he walked away. And I thought, where is he walking to? Like, where is he going? And how did he get here? And how far did he walk? And I will say this, that in that moment, I was wishing I had money to give him myself, because I would say about my father that, in everything, in all of his weakness and all of his violence, the one thing I would say that I learned from my dad is my father is a hard worker. He's a hustler. He can make money when, you don't even know how you're going to make money. He would teach me how to count money when I was little, and he would cash business, which then led to, part of why he went to prison. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, the stories about the surveillance. I mean, it could be a movie, but anyway, so he would teach me how to count the money when I was, like 5-6 years old. And so, there are things that I see now in him that I think I got that from him. I got that fortitude and that desire to succeed and to make things work, even when they feel like they're not going to work. And I think that, my dad got that from his family. They were immigrants and, strong-willed and tough people. And so over the years, I've tried to see those and remember those moments about my father and the moments that I did have with him that I enjoyed. And so I choose not to have a relationship with him, because I feel like everything that I saw and it took me so long to process, I don't want to be part of that. Like, I don't want that in my life. But I try to hold space for him and acknowledge and still love the good parts of him and what I took from our relationship.
Is there anything you'd want to say to him now? If you knew this podcast would reach him, what would you say to him?
I would say that I do hope he's well. And I'm so sorry that, I don't feel that. I'm sorry that he went through what he went through. And I know that none of that was my fault at, 12, 14, 15 years old. But I do understand what he went through. And that's what I told him on that phone call after my mother died was, that's where I wanted to leave it with him, is I respect you for what you've done. And I see that it wasn't easy for him either. And not that anything of what he did was right, but I can see deeply enough inside of his heart that, that there were times in our lives together that he meant well by me. And it just was what it was. With the limited emotional awareness he had, I think he did the best he could.
Mm. Has he tried to reach out to you since your mom died? Your mom died 30 something years ago.
She died, almost 28 years ago. No, he hasn't.
This makes me wonder about TikTok trends. There is a pretty substantial number of What does that mean, Andrea? I don't know what the actual stat is. It's just, it seems like it's increasingly common. It's something I hear anecdotally from people that I actually know, as well as on TikTok, this idea of going no contact. So, it's a big raging debate, but you basically went no contact.
Yes. And And I feel zero shame about that. I feel very empowered by that, actually, that I did the work. I thought about it a lot. I journaled about it a lot. I meditated on it a lot, prayed about it a lot. And that's where I come out. That's where I come out on it.
Free.
And free, totally free. And totally emotionally free and no resentment. And like I just explained, with a certain amount of like, I'll hold this space for you so that can put in that space some good memories.
Karena, that's beautiful. I mean, I say that with all sincerity. I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but I think, just sitting here with you, and I wish that for anybody listening or watching who went no contact, my concern with a lot of people that make that choice, and I realize for some people it's the last resort, and it's such a painful decision, but they hold on to that hurt and heartache. And it's wonderful for you to realize likelihood your dad didn't have the capacity, or you didn't want it. Like you say, you don't want to go back into the muck. So you did your work. You have given yourself that emotional freedom. You live a beautiful life and you wish him well. I mean, I feel like that is a great, just a great outcome for you, as much a heartache as you've gone through. And I hope that for anybody listening or watching who's had to make that very painful choice to go no contact, that they can hold that space, in their hearts without, because I think to be no contact and feel deep resentment, I think you were saying that at the very beginning, that then you're a prisoner, right? If you're still feeling that rage. And by the way, I think when I think about my own journey, I think for a lot of people, the healing journey is a journey, and back to the anxiety, pain, and chaos being familiar, even when you've done, in your case and my case, decades of work. Those, at least for me, I'll be curious what you say. Those feelings of chaos and grief come up from time to time. I deal with them differently now, right? Much more effectively and productively. They're not these shadow demons that they used to be. It's like, oh, I know what you are. In fact, I want to come back to your ICU exercise that I just love. It spoke to me. How do you deal with, and how frequently does the pain and chaos and those old traumatic gremlins show up in your life?
I say this in the book, and I say healing is never a one and done. And I believe that. I think that you can do most of the work. And then I think that I've learned to look at it now, when the gremlins do show up, it's an opportunity for me to grow and shift into higher level awareness and healing. And I would say that they pop up. I don't know. I would say, I don't know if I could put a number on it, but I will tell you that they come up a lot in my marriage. Right. And I married a second time, and I married to a wonderful man, and, who seems to have had a perfect childhood. I'm sure he didn't, but, but if you listen to him and his sister, it's like, oh my God, it was like the most amazing thing. But, things will happen in a relationship. And I think this is true for a lot of us, that those relationships that our soul, for some reason, has chosen to be in, or our mental capacity, we choose this person, is because there is something about them that's attractive, but then there's also something about them that's going to trigger something in us, right? And so I agree with you, what you're saying earlier, and I love what you said about now I have a different awareness of them, right? So when the triggers happen, for me, I love that most of the time I have an awareness that it's happening, right? Like I'm like, oh, here we go. Okay. I'll step away and I'll go, why am I so fucking mad at David right now? Is it really about the stuff on the counter?
We love you. We love you, David.
We love you, David.
But isn't that interesting? That you have that self-awareness to say, hey, it's me, not him.
Well, not all the time.
I didn't mean to. What, Andrea? Take that back. You're just like completely overstepping your bounds as a host.
No, not all the time. But I love that I've gotten to the point where there's an awareness, right? There's an awareness that I have when I'm in these moments, that I am no longer like, the Tasmanian devil, right? There were times in my life, even like early in my relationship with David, where like I would just poof, like I would emotionally go somewhere else because it was a trigger to like, oh, I can't trust this. Right. Like, oh, it's too good to be true. I can't trust this. Or every little thing would be like, I can't be vulnerable in this moment. So I think that I'm so proud of myself and I'm so enamored with the fact that I now have developed this keen awareness to what my triggers are. And I think the more I have done work on deep self-love and acceptance of myself and letting go of those old feelings. Also, I think it probably has something to do with being like over 50. I'm like, I don't give a crap. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have this like, I don't have this sense anymore of like, I have to prove myself or be this thing or be that thing, or I just don't. And I feel like that takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. And I keep working on my awareness every single day. Every day.
What are some of the things that trigger you still, or that had been big triggers?
I would say a trigger for me now is that I can get caught up in other things other than what I want to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like other than my work, other than writing or, working on my newsletter or my business or whatever. And I get caught up in other things. And this will be a trigger for me, instead of like realigning myself and go, okay, I'm going to redo my schedule so that I have this dedicated time, I can get very triggered and think, oh my God, I've suddenly lost my whole day. I didn't do anything I wanted to do. And that's a trigger from my childhood, right? That's a trigger because I spent decades doing a bunch of stuff I didn't want to do, taking care of people, going to the store I didn't want to go to the store, doing stuff I didn't want to do. And then after my mother died, I adopted my 9-year-old brother, raised him. It's like, so now I feel like I've lived my life in reverse. I'm 52. I want to have fun. I want to work. I want to dedicate myself. So when I feel like my schedule gets stretched or I allow my attention to go outside of things that I want to focus on, I can become triggered. And now I know that that's because it's not about David or whoever else is asking me. It's because I'm not properly saying no. And I'm not properly allowing myself to have my time. And I'm allowing this gremlin to come in from the past. It's like little Karena stomping her feet. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. Right. So
would you say these are control issues as well?
They're control issues. I would say that, I guess you're
being controlled, right? Like something.
Oh, I feel like I'm being controlled.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't like
I'm
that.
hearing you because I've got control issues.
Right. I don't like
trying
that.
To recover. Yeah. And it's like, but to me, here's a breakthrough. Hey, everybody listening and watching, if you got control issues, I so have you right now. To me, when I get that activation and it's like, oh, and I'll just tell you, yesterday it happened. I was driving my son home from his high school, usually from his tennis thing. And usually it takes 25, 30 minutes. I-25 going south here in Colorado Springs, jam-packed. There was an accident. At first, I was like, oh my God, I have so much to do. I'm interviewing Karena tomorrow. I'm doing my manifestation. Like I got all this stuff. And I was frustrated and I was fidgety. And then I was like, or I can just totally be in my body, listen to good music. And the choice that I made, it didn't make the traffic go any faster. I mean, I did use Waze. I got off a ramp and, took back roads on the way home, but it still took what should have been a 25-minute drive, took an hour and 15 minutes. And I think the older me would have really been stewing. And even for a couple minutes, I was like, oh, I'm so annoyed. And I'm like, Nicholas, this is just taking so long. And I found myself complaining. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I can't make the traffic go any faster. And so to me,
and then you had like trap time with your son, right? You're like, oh,
yeah,
hey, let's make the most of this.
Keep it real. He's 15. He is scrolling on Instagram, earbuds in. I keep trying to talk to him. He is not listening. Doesn't want to talk to his mother. He had finals. I'm like, all right, well, I would love the quality time with him, Karena, but yeah, that would have been great. You're trapped with me. Take your earbuds out. No, mom. But I say that just again, a little teeny tiny, but very real life example. I got home. I felt so good. I was like, you know what? I just gave my peace back to myself. Fuck yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
And I'm type A. I am so type A. So used to be so type A. Used to be so controlling. So when I hear you talk about when your schedule is getting hijacked, again, I'm being a little forward here, but it's like, oh, that sounds like a control issue. And to me, it's like when I think of these things that activate me, what I always say is, oh my gosh, here's my chance for mastery.
Yes.
I want to be more patient. I want to be in the flow. My peace is so freaking valuable to me. Okay, Andrea, prove it. Prove how peaceful, prove how important your peace is. Because right now you're being tested in the car. Oh, it happened again today. Where was I? Going somewhere, and it was, just driving by the Broadmoor this morning, all this backed up traffic. And I was genuinely in a hurry. I had to get to my other son's school. And next thing you know, it's way slowed down and I'm sitting in my car and I'm in this beautiful shady green area. And I was like, oh, what a gift to just take an extra breath and notice these trees that are making a canopy over the car. What a gift. And that, so I just think about these moments of opportunity for mastery that I encounter almost every day. And I personally have done a much better job of meeting those moments and saying, okay, I want to react. I want to fight back. But guess what I'm going to do instead? I'm going to notice that there is a moment for deep learning right now.
And that's what, I think we're saying this, the awareness that you can create around, I can go either way on this right now.
Well, but that ends up being the choice.
Yeah.
Right. And that I feel like it even ends up tying back into your book. What is my story right now? Either my story is I'm on I-25, I've got too much to do, there shouldn't be traffic, or, okay, there is traffic. I'm in a car that I love. I'm with my son and it's sun shining. And it was hailing 3 hours earlier because it's Colorado. But it's that reframing. Right. And it is that choice. I think what your book really beautifully articulates and what I try to be conscious of in my own life every day, it's back to, I have a choice. And in the choice is, am I going to tell myself the story of this traffic sucks and poor me, and now I can't take a hike. Instead I jump roped last night. So it's like, okay, I'm still going to get a little something. Right. And that, and there's your puppy. For those of you who are watching, you see a little waggy tail in the back. And Karena is a major dog person, people, like major. It's so sweet to have you talk about your dogs. Okay. There were a couple of other things that I just thought were really wonderful in your book, including you talk really openly about an affair and how that affair in a lot of ways saved you. And it was brutal and it brought you to your knees. Talk about that story, because I think that also will be something that resonates with a lot of people, and how this terrible thing can also be a really beautiful and important thing. Kind of like the terrible thing, I don't know, like that ends up being a gift as you reframe it.
Right. Yeah. The silver lining. So I was in a marriage that I don't want to say it was loveless. I would say we loved each other the best we knew how. We were both very emotionally unavailable, which is why I chose that person in the first place, was because he didn't require a lot of me emotionally. And it got to the point though, where our physical, we never had sex. We just never had sex. And I would sit at restaurants with him at dinner on like a Friday night, and I'd look around the restaurant and I'd wonder, is any of these other people here my person? And it's just a very lonely experience. And so
hang on, just let me understand, why didn't you have sex?
We just never, well, I tell a story in the book about the first time he invited me over to his house. When he invited me over to his house, he asked me if I wanted to come over and go into his hot tub. And I said, sure. So I bring whatever bathing suit I had in the bottom of my drawer, and from Northeastern Ohio in the 90s. And I was like, all right. And I show up at his house, and I get to his house, and it's this very modern house, very like cold and stark. And he says, oh, well, let's go. My hot tub's upstairs. I'm like, it's upstairs? And he said, yes. He says, well, it's not really a hot tub. It's a bathtub with jets.
By the way, reading your book, I got to that point, I got very nervous. Okay, keep going. I'm like, what is about to happen? Go, keep going.
So we get into this bathtub with jets, and we're wearing our bathing suits, and he's got this TV on in the corner, and the jets are, going, and he's telling me all about how his he's Jewish, but he's not really Jewish. And blah, blah, blah. And he is culturally Jewish, but they're not really Jewish. And all I'm thinking is, oh my God, I'm sitting in a faux hot tub with a guy who's a faux Jew. Like, what am I doing here? And the whole time we're doing this, he's not like making a move. He's not doing like anything moving my way. And so then we get out and we get into the shower, and it's like a kiss. And when we kiss, there's like no spark.
No chemistry,
no
spark.
chemistry, no electricity, no nothing. And we get out of the shower, and he says, would you like to stay over? And I'm thinking, this is so weird. And he turns his back, and he gets out a pair of boxer shorts and a t-shirt with a faded Budweiser beer logo on it. And he hands them to me like I'm supposed to wear these to bed. And just so odd too. Like, I've never gone to a man's house for the first time at this time and have him give me clothes to put on instead of taking my clothes off. I'm thinking, this is so weird. So I spend the night, and we have no sex. And he says to me basically like, we're not going to do that, but if you turn over, I'll spoon you. And in that moment, I thought, I would rather be here with this stranger wearing a faded Budweiser t-shirt in a cold, stark house than go back home to my mother. And that's why I chose him. And the other reason why I chose him was because I loved his mother. I loved his mother so much. His mother was like more of a mother to me than my mother ever was. And so I married him. Anyway, fast forward a few years, and I'm just miserable. I'm lonely. And I'm like thinking, am I ever going to get to have sex, like really good sex, So we start going to see this therapist, I don't know, every Thursday at noon or something like that. And she's, like this 50-something-year-old woman, and very sexy, and likes to talk about her and her husband have a great, sexual relationship.
Wait, what?
Yes.
I'm like, who is this lady? Yeah. Let's get her on the show. This seems like a very unorthodox therapist.
Right? She actually was pretty fabulous, but looking back on it, I was like in my mid-30s.
But that is pretty progressive. That I mean, back then, that would be like, what? That seems like
no, she was great. I really liked her. Actually, I really admired her. So I started having this email affair, this like emotional email affair with this guy I met from work, and my ex-husband, my then husband, finds one of these emails, which is, about oral sex and all these things. And he takes it to the therapy session, and he reads it, and he says, and she's like, he reads it, and she's just like stoic, like has, no response at all. And then she says to me, how does that make you feel? And I say, I just want to be fucked. Like, I just finally want to be fucked. And then she asks him, how does it make you feel? And he says, I'm happy with the way things are. Oh, like, how can I stay in that? Right. So nonetheless, then I get with this guy.
But did you feel emotionally connected with this guy or not at all?
Yes. Like, I feel like we loved each other. I don't think we were in love with each other. We were like roommates. And
yeah. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Shared toothpaste, brush our teeth together in our pajamas kind of thing. Which there's nothing wrong with that. But you'd think at some point there should have been chemistry and passion and sex and all that. And there wasn't. So anyway, I get with this man who is.
Hang on, did you ever have sex with your ex-husband? Like literally ever? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like 4 times in 7 years. Okay. Got you.
And I will say this. I do remember one year on his birthday, I bought a book about how to give a really good blowjob. And well, I mean, it didn't really work in that relationship, but
David says, thank you for buying that book on his birthday because it's making me real happy. That's hilarious.
Okay. So anyway, you were asking me about the guy. So the guy, oh my God, it was like the guy that rocked my world and brought me to my knees all at one time. So this guy had so much bravado. It was like all there was bravado. Like, I mean, I would just almost have an orgasm just, looking at him, whatever. So, I mean, it was crazy. So we went on for a few months and, all we did was have sex. And then he started disappearing, emotionally disappearing. He'd go away a lot. He'd go on trips a lot. Kind of gaslighting me like, oh, I'd say I don't understand this. So, well, then we should break up, or he wouldn't answer my call, or it was really emotionally abusive to me. Like I felt like I didn't understand what was happening. And I was just, it was just, my mind was not straight about any of it. And
just to fill in the gaps a little bit, because while you, as you said, great sex, but you also talk in the book about how he brought you to meet his family. And it wasn't just about the sex. Like he indicated to you that he loved you, right? It wasn't just a sexual relationship.
Yes. But I will say this. Yes, he did bring me to meet his family. He did say that he would want to have a baby with me. There were things that led me along that made me think that we were somewhere different than we were. And it got to the point though, where it was he would just disappear and emotionally disappear. And I showed up on his porch one time after he'd been away, and, I asked him like, what's going on? And why don't you ever call me? And, he would threaten to break up with me. Oh, well, if this isn't good enough for you, then we should break up. And I'm like, no, we can't break up. Like he was all I knew. And I got to this point where with this another emotionally available person, it was so scary for me. It was this idea of, I will be what you want me to be, even if it makes me miserable, so I can be with you. And that was the part that started to scare me to death, because I thought I had to be this quiet little, whatever he wanted, say whatever he wanted, do whatever he wanted person in order for him to stay with me. And so when I started to see that's what it was, and I called him out on it, and I said, I don't think that this is what I want to do. And he said to me, well, and I remember so vividly, I'm standing in front of me, and he says to me, well, you must like the way I treat you. I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you wouldn't be in this if you didn't like crazy. And he draws this circle with his fingers. If you didn't like crazy. And that, Andrea, was it for me, because there was one thing I was never going to be for anybody. And that was crazy, because that's what I thought my mother was. And that was, 35-year-old me, not having the emotional intelligence to understand, what was going on with her. But in my mind, she was fucking nuts. Right. So I was like, I don't want to be crazy like my mother. And that was it. And when he left, I had a panic attack, and I thought like my world was ending. Right? Or I kicked him out. He was at my house when this happened, and I kicked him out, and I said that was it. And when he left, I felt like literally like my heart just fell out of my body, and I had a panic attack, and I was like, I didn't know what to do. Should I call 911? Like I thought I was dying. I literally thought I was dying. Like I couldn't breathe. I was hyperventilating. It was horrible, and I spent a lot of time, and that's the first shift I was talking about earlier, when I started therapy and I decided to spend time alone and not date. I thought, I am clearly not in a good position to be choosing and selecting people to have relationships with. And I needed to get things right in my heart and understand why I was doing this, why I was choosing these people. And in one way or another, both of these men who were so important in my life were both very emotionally unavailable. And then to your point of, how did it turn out to be something good and a silver lining? Both of those relationships I actually look back on, just like I look back on about my father. I see them now with so much clarity about who they are and what they're willing to offer and what vulnerability they also had. And what I got out of those relationships, what I learned about me, And it was never about him anyway, right? Jack, the guy, the fair guy. It was
the
never
hot guy,
about
the guy that that you were nuts for. Mm-hmm.
Right. It wasn't ever about him. It was about what I was learning in that relationship with him about me. And so I've gotten to a point about all of these relationships that I came out the other side of them. I felt like I'd been run over by a truck, but I've learned how to come out the other side of them again and see the good things that there were in them, and know that I'm never going to be in a relationship like that again with anybody. So I learned so much from the experience, and in my heart, same. I wish them well, and I hope that they.
Were you in touch with Jack ever again after that time you kicked him out?
Yes.
Okay. Are you in touch now? Don't tell David. David, do not listen to this podcast.
Actually, I have been over the years, here and there, and David knows all about it, so he's fine. Yeah.
Well, it's really.
I would never do that and not have David know.
No, of course. I was mostly joking.
I know. Mostly.
Oops. No, what really hit me in the chest is in that one with Jack, how you described how you felt that, that feeling of being deeply desired. He gave that to you. I mean, it was inside of you, but he activated that. And that was really beautiful to me. I mean, and listening to you and having read the book, understanding just how it brought you to your knees, it rocked your world, but it also gave you a freaking great gift.
A great gift. Like, I mean, I didn't know the extent or the joy I would feel having sex, or how to be that free in sex. And so that was a huge, huge gift to me. And also the fun we had together, and the books he gave me to read, and again, looking back on it, it was like there in any relationship, it's like you try to find what gifts there are. I try to do that as part of my whole healing process. Is what good came out of this for me? What was the light in it? What can I take away about how am I better as a person? How am I different as a person? And, there were many things from both of those relationships. And so I don't look back on any of them with disdain or resentment at all. I look back on them like I would never be who I am today. And I would never have married someone as wonderful as my husband now had I not been through that. Because that relationship had made me learn some things and made me get to my knees so I can get back up stronger and a different person and who I want to be in a relationship. And I never would have been this exact formulation of it without that relationship.
Yeah, that's the beauty of relationships. I love to refer to one of my favorite people in the whole world, Dr. Sue Johnson, who passed away last year, the founder of EFT, Emotionally Focused Therapy, who would always talk about how relationships help us grow. Like we grow each other in relationships. And I think if you're wise, you'll see that. And that to me takes us full circle back to the beginning of this conversation. It's so easy to sit there, blame your husband, blame your parents, blame your kids, blame your siblings, blame your coworkers, and obviously an intimate relationship is different than these other forms of relationships, but they all, in my deep opinion, especially the ones that are the closest, whether they're physically intimate or emotionally intimate, that is the great gift of being a human in relationship with other humans. If you're wise, and you'll say, just like me being stuck in traffic the other day, like, oh, this kind of sucks. What is it teaching me? Right. And you too with Jack. Oh, that sucked. What is it teaching me? And what beauty did it give to you? I mean, it's like your heart, he helped crack your heart open, which to me was a freaking beautiful gift.
Yeah.
Way to go, Jack. Okay, last couple things, and we're already a little over, but I just love talking to you. You talk about a compassion meditation. Is that something that was really helpful to you? Is that something you can just talk a little bit about right now for all of us who want to do a better job of loving ourselves?
Yes, I love compassion meditation. I still do it. I do it for myself, and I do it for other people. And we talked about that earlier about, did I forgive myself? And so I think as part of this part of the conversation about, compassion and forgiveness, it's also about all of these things apply to finding compassion for ourselves. So the compassion meditation is some version of, everybody can, morph it into what they like, but my version is really thinking about being in a beautiful place, beautiful, safe place by myself and imagining this person and having them arrive. And then what is this conversation? What do we need to say? What do I feel with them? And finding some sort of space where I can feel their energy and I can find the grace about, what did they go through? Who were they in the moment? What was their experience like growing up? And I try to find those spaces of energy for them and then think through like what that feel more about how I would feel for them in a moment if we had that moment together. And I did this a lot for my mother after she died because I couldn't do it. I couldn't break through with a therapist. We kept trying and I would just sit there and I would just name the 18 reasons of that day why I couldn't forgive her. So I really wanted to try to do it on my own. So I read about it and I started doing it on my own and I felt it was very powerful for me. And there was, many times I would do it and, she wouldn't show up.
How long are we talking doing it? Are we talking 5 minutes, 2 hours?
Oh yeah.
Like how much time?
I don't know. I think I remember doing this and I wasn't, so keen on meditating in the beginning. So I would set my alarm on my phone or something, right? Like, oh, let me set an alarm and just say if I could do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. But, these days I still do it. And, and I'll just lose myself into it and, get out of it when I'm ready to get out of it. And, in these days it's, sometimes it's about myself. I think we all need to kind of do that for ourselves here and there. I can be kind of hard on myself. I'm also a type A recovering perfectionist.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah. So I like to do it, for myself as well. But, it's just, I also like to write compassion letters. So if anybody out there is feeling like, oh, I'm not big on that yet or whatever, you can also do this by writing a letter. Writing a letter.
What would
to somebody.
that look like? Who have you written letters to? And do you send them?
Oh, I wrote so many letters to my mother. I used to write letters to little me. Oh my gosh. To like 12-year-old me that I used to feel so ashamed of for asking strangers for money or, going to school wearing the same thing too much or, whatever. I would write letters like, I forgive you. And weren't you strong and weren't you brave? And you were so smart to know how to do that. How did you know how to do that? And I would write these kind of letters. And I think that's also really powerful. It's creating the space to dip into that because I feel that we're always taught how to or encouraged to like have compassion for other people and be nice to them and say something nice to them. But I'm like, especially I feel like if you're raised in trauma, you don't always do that for yourself. So I've tried to, over the years, really develop a compassion practice where I not only do it for other people, but I've done it a lot for myself in the self-love part of my healing journey.
Oh, that's awesome. I feel that so deeply. I really do. Right here, right in my chest. And honestly, it's like, it's again, we're on similar journeys. I think of just how I have learned to love myself and love my life and love my body. And it's like, oh my God, I have so much more to give. And the resentments and judgment and criticism that I held for people around me, it's like vaporized for the most part. Every now and then these things bubble up, keeping it real. But it really is, I feel like such an underhyped, and there's so much hype in the world. So this idea of compassion as a killer app, if you will, it just so punches above its weight. So I love that it's just so easy. You can sit there for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and just like you say, visualize. And it can be, these things, hey, people listening, watching, I'm going to do it too. Make it your own, right? You described being in a beautiful place, having this kind of conversation. It can happen. Even for me, when I'm pissed off at somebody, happens sometimes, send or hurt, right? I don't usually get angry. It's more hurt. It's like, oh, let me send loving kindness. Let me just send, even just that first step, right? And then, compassion it goes even deeper. Okay, that leads to my last thing that I just loved. talk about your ICU practice.
So I was for decades somebody who just stuffed all my emotions, and I wouldn't ever acknowledge them. I'd just be like, I can't deal with that right now. So I started this thing where I call it ICU, and I would stop whatever I was doing if I was feeling anger, hurt, resentment. And this is how I started with the kind of the negative emotions, right? The ones I didn't really want to feel. And I would stop whatever I was doing, go somewhere quiet, and I would literally close my eyes and I would imagine that emotion there. And I would say, I see you. I see you. And I'd wait and I'd want to understand, why is that emotion showing up for me? Why is it there? And, the whole reason why I kind of started this was when I learned about the real meaning of the word emotion. Like the root word in Latin is like amorve, which means to move through. Right. So your emotions are meant to move through. You're not supposed to hold on to them, and like the negative energy of what that does into your body for disease, which we can talk about at some other time.
No, but that's real.
That's real. That's real. That is not like pseudoscience. That is like real.
No, it's not. It is. So many illnesses are due to emotional blocks. But
yes.
Go ahead, please.
So I say, I see you, and it's anger, and I just kind of feel it, and I'm like, why are you here? And I talk to it. Why are you here? What do you want me to know? And I look at these emotions as a gift. What do you want me to know? Why are you showing up for me? And typically it starts out like, oh, it's up here and it's about whatever's in the present moment. And then I think, okay, what is the underlying emotion? What's the emotion under it? It's not really anger. What is it? Is it fear? Is it sadness? What is it? And so I go there, and then typically it's about something else that's happened to me. Right. And it's like a trigger, and it's responding up. And what I do is I feel these emotions, and I allow myself the space and time to feel it. And then I thank the emotion for being there, and I release it. And I actually wait till I feel it dissipate, or I can feel it kind of leaving my body. And then I go about my business. And I was doing this a lot early on in my healing journey because it was all new to me. And I don't know, I'm sure there are people out there who understand what I'm saying, but like when you have gone through that amount of trauma and you're trying to get through life, and you're trying to survive, not only survive, but you're trying to like make something of your life and make something, you think, oh, I don't have time for this. And so you push it all down, and then you get so good at pushing it all down that you don't know how to feel it the way you need to feel it, or the way you should be feeling it to release the energy. So I really put a lot of effort into it in the beginning. And now I feel like I'm better at feeling the feelings. But there are times when it gets a little more complex, and you need to really understand, like, why is this bothering me so much? And that's also a beautiful exercise to do in those moments. Like if, you're harboring something and you're holding on to it, for a day or two, and you're like, why is this still bothering me so much? That kind of I see you moment is a good exercise for sure.
I mean, it feels like I've been doing it since reading your book, and I feel like it is just such a way to be honest with yourself and compassionate and own it, and so simple. Now, do you typically do breath work or anything else with it, or is it literally just, hey, I see you, anger, hurt, whatever it is, and then what did you say? You said then you ask, why are you here? What are you trying to tell me?
Why are you here? What are you trying to tell me? And then I thank it for being there. And yes, I'm a big believer in breath work. I exercise breath work. Different types of different things. And I write in the book, I have a whole chapter on the different modalities of healing that I tried, and things that are out there and available for people. And one of my first experiences with breathwork was holotropic breathwork. And that was really intense, but boy, breathwork is an incredibly powerful way to release emotional energy. And for me, it's also an incredible way to let out or resurface memories, suppressed memories. That's happened to me a lot during breathwork, which I've also found very beneficial. In the aftermath, it's hard sometimes when you're going through it. So, anytime you're doing this breathwork, make sure you read up, or, do it with somebody who's done it before, because it can be quite powerful. I'm sure you've had that experience. I know.
Oh yeah. I talk a lot. I like to call myself a little bit of queen of breathwork, because it has been a game changer for me in literally every way. And there's still, I feel like I've just recently been initiated into this powerful practice. There are many different types of, I haven't done the Wim Hof method. And so I feel like there are a lot of different breathwork practices that I'm eager to dive into. But the ones that I've been doing have been, like you said, just really game changers, game changing.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. All right, Karena, I could talk to you for days. Thank you for your beautiful book. For those of you who are watching, Rise Above the Story. For those of you who are listening, I'm holding up her beautiful book. You can get it everywhere. You can get it on Amazon and the library. Just Audible. I actually see that it's an Audible as well.
It is an Audible, and I narrated it, and people seem to really enjoy that. And I also say, if people want to go to my website, riseabovethestory.com, there's a sign up there for an acknowledgement guide, which is just the first step in the process. So it's also just kind of a good way to dip your toe in and as well. But thank you, Andrea. I've loved talking to you. This has been such a wonderful and meaningful conversation. And I certainly hope that the listeners have some good takeaways.
Amen. Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Karena. Oh, wow. What a beautiful episode. And honestly, I hope you took away a lot of practical little nuggets. But the thing I just really want to underscore, and I know I just talked about it a few minutes ago, but it's in my heart. And I really just, I hope it'll be in your heart too. This idea of being able to see ourselves. Such a small but compelling practice that as I said, I am doing it frequently, and I'm going to continue to make this part of my practice. I hope you do too. I hope when you're feeling irritated, when you're feeling hurt, when you're feeling righteously pissed off, when you're feeling confused, whatever those, in air quotes, negative emotions, because let's face it, none of them are negative. They are all there to tell us something and to be released, but that you can find that quiet space and just say, I see you. I see you, anger. What are you trying to tell me? And then thank you. And even saying those words, it makes my body kind of light up and feel energized, like, oh, that is such a gift to be able to give yourself. And guess what? Only you can give that gift to yourself. And when I think about, many of us are doing therapy and breath work and healing and all these different things, when I think about, it's in that moment of hurt. It's in that moment of feeling frustrated or angry or shameful or that moment of feeling activated, that's when this practice is so powerful, right? A lot of people will see their therapist once a week, or we do our meditation in the morning or in the evening. What's so beautiful to me about this practice is it's so practical. You can do it in as little as 30 seconds to a minute, right? How long does it take just to say, okay, anger, I see you. What are you trying to tell me? Okay, thank you. In that moment, we have that beautiful opportunity, as Karena said, to allow those emotions to move through us, And that's resetting your nervous system. That is resetting those triggers and giving yourself an opportunity to be emotionally free in the moment and as much as you need it. And that, to me, when she described that in her book, I was like, oh, snap. This is game on. I hope it's game on for you too. Whew. As always, thanks so much for tuning in to Getting Open. And as always, please write to me if you have questions, feedback. I always love getting emails from you guys, gettingopen@yourtango.com. Also, I love your comments. And if you're not following the show, please do wherever you get it, YouTube, iHeart, Spotify. I don't want you to miss an episode. My team and I are bringing the show to you with our full hearts. We hope you love it, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for tuning in.